I would like to acknowledge the founder of our company, Bob Farrell. Bob Farrell passed away 2 weeks ago, and I I had the privilege of spending many years with Bob as we got the idea to bring this company back that I'll be talking about. He was a very wise and godly man, which I'll let you know more about. But I think the line at the bottom says it best. If you aren't a better person by the time you leave Farrell's, then we've failed. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted people to come in, work, and learn something about life, learn something about God. And I am going to deeply miss Bob. But I am challenged and empowered and motivated to make Farrell's even bigger and stronger because it's got that man's name on it. So, um, let me tell you a little bit about Bob. Um, Bob is um, Bob is an author. Well, obviously he founded Farrell's Ice Cream Parlor, but Bob is an author. He wrote a best-selling book called "Give 'Em the Pickle," and also a video by the same name. And the video became so popular that it's actually seen today in many Fortune 500 companies as their number one training video for customer service. I happened to be with the director of operations for Southwest Airlines last week, and we were talking, and he goes, "Hey, I know the pickle story." I said, "You do?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Southwest Airlines, it's required viewing at Southwest Airlines." I said, "Was that before?" He goes, "Oh no, today." I said, "Really?" The other one that I thought was very interesting, I've heard a lot of people, Macy's uses it, Nordstrom uses it, but I ran into a guy, vice president of Blizzard Entertainment. How many of you know Blizzard Entertainment? Yeah, there you go, those video game nuts out there. Blizzard Entertainment, and he says, "Yeah, we use your video, the video that Bob did," and I'm thinking, video games, how does that pickle? And he said, "No, for our sales team, because our sales team, we want them to empower what Bob Farrell talks about in his Give 'Em the Pickle book and video." Um, I had I had an opportunity that I'll talk about how I got started with the Farrells, but um, when I met Bob the first time, actually Paul and I flew up there. We had just got the license trademark, and we were up there to tell Bob that we were getting ready to bring the company back. And I actually called him and told him we were coming up and the purpose. And so we met him at a restaurant. We sit down in front of him, Paul and I, and Bob looks at his watch and he goes, "Gentlemen, you've got 1 hour." So I thought, wow, I better talk fast. So we started talking about what we were planning to do, and he stopped me and he said, "I've got a question. How are you going to take care of your customer? How are you going to take care of your employees?" And so I gave him the answer, and as well as Paul. And that 1 hour ended up turning into an entire day with Bob driving us around Portland, showing us where the Farrells used to be, his original Farrells. And then as we got ready to leave for the airport, he opened his trunk and he gave us memorabilia, one-of-a-kind memorabilia from Farrells, and said, "You know what? You are the right guys to do this." So, and then it was interesting when Bob Farrell flew down. We'd actually opened a restaurant. I picked him up at the airport, and he had come down for that opening. And so I had to stop and get gas. So I go in to pay for it, and I pump the gas, and then I get in my car. And I get in my car. Bob is playing my CD in my car. And I looked at him and I said, "Bob, what are you doing?" And he goes, "I wanted to see what kind of music you listen to." So, he trusted me, but he was verifying. That was said by Ronald Reagan: "Trust but verify." Just so happened he was listening to one of my favorite CDs at the time by Avalon. So in any case, but it kind of shows even a man like Bob, how when he started his company, how he really wanted it to be a company that was not only run by the right people, but even his employees, we call them cast members now, that we want them to be of the same fiber as we are. So why am I speaking to all of you tonight? I wish I could tell you and stand up here and tell you that I have an MBA or even a BA. I went to college for about 3 years, which kept me out of the height of the Vietnam War. So where did I get my education? Where did entrepreneurs like Paul Allen, Richard Branson that founded Virgin Airlines, Michael Dell, Ty Warner who started the Beanie Baby company, CEOs like of media, big media companies like Simon Cowell, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity. How did they get their ability to be so successful without a truly a formal education? You know, when Jesus picked his disciples, he just picked ordinary men. He didn't pick the smartest. He picked people that he thought he had the strong faith in, that they would end up carrying on his purpose throughout the world. Jesus picked doers. He had faith that they would be able to gain wisdom through him and his on-the-job training, and that they would be educated during that time with him, but more importantly, that those disciples would carry out his plan. Even the failure of Judas brought additional wisdom to the other disciples. And we all know that the disciples had many successes, but they also had many failures. So what kept Jesus' disciples going? What kept them going? Anybody? Who said faith? I heard it over here. Who said faith? Yes, faith. Here's a book by Pastor Rick Warren. One of my favorites is obviously the all-time bestseller, and it's signed by Pastor Rick. Yes, it's faith. Faith kept them going. That they were making the right decision by following him. You know, they didn't know anything about Jesus. I mean, here these guys had their own businesses, so to speak, fishermen. And here's a guy saying, you know what, I've got an idea. You know, I've got an idea that you might all be interested in. But you're going to have to give up everything you have and trust me and follow me. And I'm going to teach you along the way. I mean, just think of that. You know, don't get me wrong. I really wish that I would have stayed in school. I really wish that I would have completed at least my BA. And I applaud those of you that stood up. I really did. I really did. Those of you that stood up the MBA program. Those of you that stood up in the master's program. Some of you are going to be going on for your PhDs. One of my sons is at the University of Washington going for his PhD right now. And, you know, I applaud you and I congratulate you. But you know what? There might be somebody in this audience tonight that feels, you know, I might want to take my chances. You know, I've got a couple more years left, but I've got this great idea. And I got a couple of my friends that I'd really like, kind of like Steve Jobs did. You know, got this great idea, but I'm going to have to drop out of school, put my education on hold for that dream. But I have to say, you know what? Not so fast. Have you asked God for permission to do that? If not, then what you're telling God is, you know what's best for you, right? You know, Does anybody know how to make God laugh? Yes, tell him your plans. Tell him your plans. So I might suggest that maybe what you're feeling or seeing is that light that you really long for, that success. But you know what? Maybe that light is actually the light of a train coming right at you. If you ask God for help in your decisions, he will let you know if that light is actually a train coming toward you or a green light. You know, God wants to use people. God uses people who want to be used. And I really believe that. How many of you prayed something like this? God, I know you and I trust you. Direct me to the work you want me to do and help me to do it well. Help me with this, whatever it is, the decision, so that I can continue to do your will. For I know my biggest reward lies in not how much money I make, but how many people I will impact in my work that may lead them to a relationship with you. So you say that prayer maybe once, twice, maybe lots of times, and then you wait, and you wait, and you wait, and you wait. You know, personally, I've discovered that for me, when I ask God for something, I get an answer in a reasonable amount of time. But how do I know it's God? That's probably what you're thinking. How does he know that that's God? For me, I get this thought. I get this gut feeling. Many years when I was younger, I used to ignore this thought because it was something that I didn't like, or you get that gut feeling to kind of do something, but you kind of go, I don't want to do that. I would then get that same thought or gut feeling several more times. And as I got older, you know what? I found out that was God. That was God. And I knew that because what I ended up doing is doing the thing that I actually wanted to do instead of going with that gut feeling, if we call it, God's whisper to me. And you know what? I would always think, geez, if I would have just gone with that. That's how I know that was God. A whisper, a poke. Our family calls them God winks. You know when you have that thing happen in your life where you go, what are the chances of that? We call it a God wink because it's not a coincidence. Everything is planned in his perfect plan. Do you know what really gets in the way of so many people with incredible ideas? Passionate, driven people. They just can't take that leap. They just can't. It's fear. Fear to fail, fear of the unknown, fear of looking bad, fear of being embarrassed. Stepping into that water without the fear of drowning. Just like the disciple Peter. Jesus teaches us about this in Matthew 14. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and beginning to sink, cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You of little faith, he said, why do you doubt? It was obvious Peter had more fear than he had faith at that time. So how do you get rid of fear? What's the cure of fear? Well, the answer is faith in Christ. And you've heard that over and over and over, haven't you? We all have. But do you really, really, really have that faith in Christ? Could you have been the one to step out of that boat knowing those guys had been in those boats hundreds, thousands of times. They knew how deep the water was. Would you have done it? That is true faith. So here's what you do to get rid of fear. You improve your faith. I have an acronym for faith. Fear ain't in this house. And I used ain't because I didn't get that degree. Damn. So let me talk to you now about my journey and how I discovered my faith and how God led me to the position that I'm in right now. Is this my last stop, CEO of Farrell's Ice Cream Parlor? Might be, might not. But I know this, I'm going to go wherever God wants me to go. So in 2003, here we are. Paul Kramer, Bob Farrell, and myself. And we had connected. We had actually opened our first unit in 2001 in Santa Clarita. Paul graduated from Cal Poly. He was the first one I called when I had the thought of bringing Farrell's back. And the reason I did is because of his strength and conviction and passion. And, you know, Paul has been not only a great friend, he's been a mentor in many ways. I don't want to say that he rubs his degree in, but every time I go into his office, he's always polishing that diploma plaque. Don't you? No, he doesn't. Paul is very, very humble. So who has been to Farrell's before? I'm going to address this to the students. Students, bring back the silverware you took. And I know, listen, my kids went to school. I know, look at when you're trying to get your dorm stocked and, you know, it's tight. So you borrow silverware from Farrell's. That's okay. Just bring it back. So what is Farrell's? I guess most of you have been there. Well, it's old, started in 1963, but it's new. It's turn of the century, not the last the century before that. Turn of the century. It's a place for unforgettable times. Eat, scoop, and celebrate. It's a restaurant, full-service restaurant. Huge desserts, great food, fun, candy, happiness, craziness, and all of that rolled into one building. We have, right now, we have 7 locations, and we're very excited about these. We're planning to expand, and right now we're kind of on a pause right now to take a look at ourselves and our company to kind of regroup. But Farrell started September 13th, 1963. Let me tell you a little unusual story about that date. Bob Farrell passed away 2 weeks ago. And his family, Bob, obviously very popular up in the Portland, Northwest area. They're having a huge memorial service. So they had to pick a date. And the date they wanted was actually, I think, this weekend. But it wasn't available. The pastor was not available. So the pastor looks in his book, and he goes, I'm sorry, I'm booked. And they really wanted this pastor. So they said, well, what date are you available? September 13th. Yeah. Makes your hair stand up. Still does. But you know what? That's Bob up there, still controlling Farrell's from up there. So, you know, I know he's in control. So here it is. Opens up 1963. Wow, what a place. A place where you could go, have a great Sunday, have fun with your family. And it took off. It took off like a rocket. And so Bob Farrell opens one, and then all of a sudden he opens another one within a year, and then a couple of more, and then a couple of more, and then he started getting into franchising. And pretty soon he's got quite a few restaurants kind of going down into California now. And Marriott approaches him because at that time they owned several restaurant chains and said, geez, we would like to buy Farrell's. So Bob said, well, I'm not going to sell it to you, but I'll run the company for you, and then we can talk. So that's exactly what happened. Marriott did buy it. Bob ran it for them, and it just exploded. They ended up building, They ended up building 130 plus restaurants all over the United States. Wow. Every one of them successful, every one of them profitable, never had to even move a location. What a great company. And then Marriott decided to get out of the food business and focus on their hotels. So they decided to sell all the chains. So Farrell's was one of those. They owned Bob's Big Boy and many others. So Farrell's was sold to an investment group in San Francisco. And this was about in in the late 70s. And the San Francisco group, they had their own ideas about Farrell's. Well, there was half the company were corporate stores, the other half were franchisees. So they decided to do things that were really unheard of, like take away the drum, take away birthday songs, only at the table, no big group birthday songs, and get rid of that drum. And by the way, the ice cream, we don't want to see you making ice cream. We're going to throw that in the back, and let's put a salad bar in its place. Woohoo! Well, the franchisees, they didn't like this at all, so they said no, and lawsuits went back and forth. But it didn't take very long because the corporate side, after they made these changes, just tanked. So within 2 years of buying Farrell's, it went into bankruptcy. So what happened is Marriott gets it back, and the approximate 65 franchisees are allowed to operate for 5 more years using the Farrell's name, trademark, and all of that through Marriott. But at the end of the 5th year, they all had to close or change the name. Now, some of them stayed open. They did change the name. There was one in Rosemead, changed to Dixie's. And it was around for a long time. The one up in Portland, where that picture was, it was called Portland's Old-Fashioned Ice Cream Parlor. But everybody still thought of it as Farrell's. So it was kind of a crazy thing. So then when they closed, this was now in the late 80s, they're gone. Farrell's gone. Except there was one guy in San Diego. He owned 8 franchises, closed them, but he kept one open, and he called it Farrell's. And he kept it under the radar for a little while and then got caught. But got a sympathetic ear by Marriott, and so Marriott did a one-off license with him, and he was able to stay open. Then when Paul and I ended up getting the license and trademark, he unfortunately had health issues and closed. But because of him, we're able to say that Farrell's has been operating consistently for 52 years. So in any case, so how did I get in the position I'm in right now? All right, so let's let me take you back a little ways. Let me take you back a long time. When I graduated high school, the Vietnam War was at its height, and the draft was going on big time. They had a lottery by your birth date, and they would pick a number based on your birth date. And that's how they determined how many people they were going to draft. So let's say they would go and they would keep taking people based upon the lottery, and then if they didn't reach your number, you were safe. Well, guess what? The year that I turned 18 was the worst time. And my number was like 264, so I was going to get drafted. Except if I enrolled in college, I could get a 2S, what they called college deferment. And as long as I maintained a C average, then I could continue to stay in school and stay out of Vietnam. But when I was 18, I remember this is not them, but this is the scene. This is an actual picture, though, of high school kids and older that were drafted, getting on a bus to go to boot camp. And I remember vividly going to the bus station, depot center, where they were transporting them, and watch a bunch of my high school friends get on a bus. And I'll never forget, as that bus pulled away, they were yelling, "Lucky dog! Lucky dog!" That was the last time I saw several of them. They never came home. Well, guilt set in. I had done nothing for my country. And where was I with my walk with God at that point? Well, it was about going to Mass once a week with my parents. And that was about it. So I was working at my dad's roller rink during that time. And he had worked as a store manager for Sears and decided he wanted to own his own business and thought a skating rink would be the best place to put his money. So that's what he did. He ended up buying a skating rink. And, he bought it because that was his dream. But the fact is that that wasn't my dream. And I felt I needed to do something. So what did I do? Oh, there's Skateland in I forgot to show you. There's Skateland in 1968. So when he took it over, that looks like a 1968 roller skating rink to me. Kind of run down, and actually that's me right there, standing right there. But I decided to join the Los Angeles Police Department because I had a dream of being a police officer. And I felt this is a good way for me to give back to my country and to my community. So I did that, and I learned an awful lot. Oh my gosh. So here I am, 21 years old, and I'm hitting the streets of LA, and had a couple of close calls, but wow, it was nothing back then like it is today. I had I worked with a lot of partners, as we all do, on the streets, and I worked with a lot of people. And there were a couple of guys that I really liked working with. One was Paul Verna. He was actually one of my training officers after I graduated. Paul was shot and killed on the 210 freeway in 1983. Had stopped a vehicle, and he was literally ambushed. The other guy I liked working with, Ron Ball, he was one of my favorites. Ron was killed in 1986 by a pipe bomb that had been booby-trapped. These were great guys, and they taught me a lot. And during that time, maybe because of the danger and all of that, my prayers started to increase. They always say you'll never find an atheist in a foxhole. And not that it was that bad, but I did begin praying. And but I didn't have a relationship with God, but I did pray. I left the LAPD, and I got an offer from my dad. My brother and I got an offer from my dad to take over the skating rink. But did I ask God about that decision? No. Because I didn't even think about asking God. I just figured I'd do it on my own. But I had a dream of owning my own business now. And, that led me in developing some talents. One of the things I ended up doing is I had a very unique thing of getting our businesses into the media. It's a gift. I don't know where I get it from, but it's truly a gift. And so with that, I ended up being asked by CBS Sports to be on-camera analyst for roller skating events, World Championships, Pan American Games. Yeah. So and so I did that. That's kind of a part-time gig. Well, I hadn't owned my own business. And then in between that, because I had knowledge of skating and all that, I taught Olivia Newton-John for the movie Xanadu. So if you watch that on Netflix, you'll see my name in the credits. So, and I taught, pretty much anytime there was roller skating on television, I would teach the celebrities how to teach. Henry Winkler, when the skating scene was on Happy Days, and so on and so forth. So what ended up happening with Skateland? Well, Skateland ended up in the hands of my brother and myself. And wow, same building, a lot different. Pretty cool. Skating was great, especially in the 70s, because of the disco music, roller disco. And I'll tell you, we were just going crazy and making so much money back then. But then guess what? Disco sucks. And so does roller skating, disco skating. So what happened then is our business dropped like a rock. And we were very close to bankruptcy. That's how bad it got. Half of the skating rinks in the entire country closed between 1980 and 1983. It was horrible. That's when I dropped to my knees. That was it. I had to ask God, what do I do? That was the first time I asked God, what do I do? That was also the first time I picked up my Bible that I had gotten from a gift like 10 years before that I had never even opened. It wasn't long after that I had the opportunity to take over a skating rink in Orange. And I went through during that time, that really low time, I actually went through a divorce. I had married a non-believer, and so obviously, as I started to get stronger in faith, there was a clash, and of course that whole thing came crashing down, as a lot of my life did. But then when I had that opportunity to take over the skating rink in Orange, I started doing that, and then that's when I ran into a pretty young lady named Robin. And Robin was the one that really opened my eyes to my faith. And we ended up getting married. And we've been married almost 29 years. And this is my wife, Robin, in the pink. Stand up, honey. And I have my daughter, Shauna, and her newlywed husband, Matthew, my son-in-law, newly. Ryan is my son's surfer model, and his fiancee Jessica is with us as well. So what ended up happening? Well, look what happened. Skateland turned around. It started to take off. Robin got me into her church, which was the United Methodist Church. And that's where I started having a relationship with Christ. Big difference. I finally started having a relationship. Because you know what? I couldn't understand this thing about love Jesus. I love Jesus. You know, I would go to a Promise Keeper event, or I would go to a Harvest Crusade, and we love Jesus. Yes, we do. We love Jesus. How about you? I didn't get it. Where do you get that? Oh. Hello. Where do people get that? I didn't have it. I didn't understand it, but I wanted it. And you know, my brother and I had this dream to expand. Another dream came up to expand, and so, you know, I've got this thing going on trying to figure out my faith, and then all of a sudden we have an opportunity to get involved in this fun center, but we had one problem. We didn't have any money, but guess what? God led us to a partner, and they said, we're looking for partners in California, and you know what? We're taking our company public. And we want you guys to build 10 of these in California. And just before the IPO comes out, we're going to give you a lot of stock. And we're going, oh my gosh, wow, wow. Matter of fact, they were written up in Forbes magazine as the quote was, it's not Disney, but it's close. In Forbes magazine, yikes. So we end up starting construction 1994. They're going to go public in late 1994, and then the Northridge earthquake hits. Well, guess what? You can't get concrete when there's an earthquake, a big earthquake, and that's what we had. So we couldn't build it, which means that when the company went public, we couldn't roll our center in and get stock. So all those millions of dollars went with the ground shaking. So, what was interesting is that we did open it. But what was even more interesting is what happened to Mount Asia Entertainment International that was started by and run by a Christian family. We went to church with them. We went to church with them in Atlanta. Stomp and Holler, Fire, I mean, oh my gosh, wow, what a church. And, so I'm going, wow, Christian people and a family and all of that. But guess what? With the millions and millions of dollars that came in, they got greedy. They started doing things that weren't supposed to be done. And my brother and I had a front row seat to watch a publicly traded company come crashing down. We were very fortunate because our attorney had put a one-line sentence that allowed us to take over operations of our center that we had gotten investors to invest in. And we were the only one out of the entire company to pull their park out before the thing crashed and burned. Everybody lost millions of dollars except for ours. We were the only one. So then what happens there? Well, I decided it's time to get a nicer food operation in our center. That's when I found a silver token. I can't actually carry it in my wallet, but I left my wallet with my wife. I carry it in there. It's a silver token and that I actually found sitting on top of a cup of we call bogus tokens that are like Chuck E. Cheese and things that aren't supposed to be mixed in with Mount Asia's. But sitting on the top like a cherry was this silver token that said Farrell's. Farrell's. I used to go there in high school. Wow, let's put a Farrell's in here. So I started the research. Well, there weren't any open that I could find, but I found Marriott owned the license. So I called Marriott. It took me a while to get a hold of somebody there that knew anything. And the guy said, wow, this is pretty interesting. He said, we haven't had anybody ever ask us about this thing, but we just sold it 2 weeks ago. I said, to who? Well, I don't know, some guy. And I said, well, can I contact him? He says, well, I can have him contact you. Okay, fine. Well, I get a call from him 2 weeks later. So Herman calls me up, and I tell him I want to get involved with him somehow. And he goes, well, I plan to take it to Taiwan. And I said, well, how about the U.S.? Well, he said, well, no, but I'll tell you what, I'll license you for California. So Paul and I go, wow, we'll do California. So that's how it started. Then, and the dream, I got to tell you about the dream. Oh my gosh, the dream. It was huge. Oh my gosh, was it huge. So we start getting everything done. We're getting meaty. We're on the front page of the Register. I got lots of good ways to get, by the way. If you want to see me about that, I can get TV coverage like that. Little secrets. So we're on the front page, multiple, television interviews and things like that. So we ended up getting an investor to come in right away, and we're like off to the races. Well, what ended up happening is we didn't realize, except my wife had always warned me about doing business, with somebody that's not equal yoked, like maybe an atheist. And that's what Herman was an atheist, because we walked into a church for a business meeting because I used the conference room. And as we're walking in, Herman turns to me and he goes, wow, I've not been in a church. I said, oh, you don't? So I'm thinking, oh, another religion or something. And he goes, no, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in this. Hocus pocus. I'm going, oh gosh, my wife's voice is echoing. But I've got the dream. I've got the dream. Well, what ended up happening is Herman ended up committing fraud against us, and we had to sue him. First time I've ever sued anybody in my life, but that was the only way to protect ourselves. So we end up suing Herman, and it goes along 6.5-year trial, or 6.5-year legal battle. We went to trials, 3.5-week trial in Superior Court. We win the trial. Bob Farrell testifies. We win $6.2 million plus punitives. Well, that'll be enough to take care of us, except Herman doesn't have any money. But he has the license and trademark. So we end up going, okay, we won. And then he files an appeal. Well, that takes almost 2 years to go through the appellate court, by which the appellate court rules, you guys had an expert witness that used the wrong formula. You accounting students can look it up online. And we're going to overturn that judgment. So all he really owes you is $200,000, not $6.2 million. Game over. Anybody, in his position anyway, can come up with $200,000. I thought, we're done. We're toast. He'll pay us. We'll pay our attorney, and that's it. But he didn't. So we're back in the game. So then we went after him in bankruptcy. And then finally in bankruptcy court, we were able to hear the judge's gavel. Boom! Parlour Enterprises, you now are the owner of Farrell's Ice Cream Parlor license trademark. Our dream was delivered. So we end up opening Farrell's in Mission Viejo. Wow. It was awesome. Huge lines, media, television vans, front page article again on the Orange County Register. So I get a phone call from Pastor Rick Warren. And actually came through, his Ann Crum, his secretary, calls and says, Mr. Fleming, Pastor Rick read about you guys opening Farrell's, and is Bob Farrell around there? I said, well, he's going to be there this week. She said, Rick would like to meet him. I said, oh, great, come on in, bring him in. So there's Bob Farrell and Rick. They're having a zoo. Rick wanted a zoo because he said when he was in college, or seminary, he ended up, he and his buddy went to Farrell's and they ate a zoo together. So the Daniel plan wasn't popular back then. So Rick wanted a zoo, so there they are eating their zoo. And so it was really cool. Rick signed my book, Purpose Driven Life, and wow. But I didn't know a lot about Pastor Rick. I really didn't. And I just knew that, he was very high profile and all that. So guess what? I get another phone call from Ann Crum. She says, Mike, Pastor Rick would like to meet with you. But what about? So I go there. I pull up, and he's sitting on a water pipe in front of the refinery. And I get out, and we hug, and so he goes, I want to talk to you about some stuff. And I'm going, wow. I'm looking around, and it's like, pinch me. I'm sitting here with Pastor Rick, like one-on-one. So I tell him the story about Farrell's. And then what Pastor Rick says to me, he says, that's no surprise. You went through the 6 phases of faith. I said, what? The 6 phases of faith. He says, let me write them out for you. So he did. And I stole this from Paul. Paul, what'd you do there? It looks like you had a little water on there or something. Must have fallen in a river. But Pastor Rick actually wrote them out for me. And I have them, but I stole this one from Paul's. He actually wrote them out for me in a book. And I made a copy just like Paul, because they were so powerful. So I want to share them with you with Pastor Rick's permission, which he did give me. But before that, I was so impressed. I was blown away. So I said, okay, we've got to go to this church. This guy blew me away. We have got to go to this church. So next Sunday we go to the church. Say that to my son. My son Ryan says, who is this? I said, Pastor Rick Warren. Who's that? He says, Dad, I don't I just want to go to our church. I said, no, I really want you to go. So we argue a little bit, so finally he goes. So we're in there, great service. We get done, we're walking out. I look at Ryan, he goes, Dad, this guy's like really cool. We got to join this church. So that's what we did. And later on, the period of time went by, and Pastor Rick baptized my family and baptized me. And it was one of the most meaningful days of my life. So let's talk about the 6 phases of faith. Ooh, boy, I'm going to talk fast. All right, and this is important. Wow. So I hope I didn't bore you for the first part, because this part is the best. So, 6 phases of faith. Well, what do you got? First thing, you have to have a dream, right? You heard me talking about the dream to be a policeman, dream to be my own business owner, the dream to open the fun center, it all starts with a dream. Do I have a dream planted in me by God? That's the first one. Planted in me by God. Because we know that we're here on earth for a purpose, right? God put us here. Every single one of them, every single one of us, we're here for a purpose. So if you've got this dream going on, that's why I was talking about dropping out of school. Hey, I got this like really cool plan for the business. Really cool plan. Well, if it's planted by God, full steam ahead, but get your education first. If you don't have a dream, start praying. God, give me your dream. If you can't write it down, the dream, if you can't write down the dream God has given you, you need to be praying. If you don't have a dream, you're not living. You're just existing. Everyone has to have a God-planted dream, because God placed you on this earth for a purpose. So what is your dream? Decision. Do I need to make a faith decision that will help that dream become a reality? Some of you have a dream from God, but you haven't made a decision to follow it. You're still on the fence. God's word for you is go for it. So what's your dream? Is fear getting in your way? Remember what I said about faith and fear? Yeah, fear ain't in this house. So you have to make a decision. Then guess what? You're going to have a delay. Yep. Every single one of the careers and the things that I did that I just told you about, every single one, I had a delay. LAPD, I pass every test. I'm ready to go. I get a letter in the mail. You're disqualified. You've got this lower back issue. You've got this problem with your lower back, and we can't take you. So I go in to Central Receiving Hospital, and I talk to the doctor, and he goes, no, he says, you know what? He says, I said, well, I'm gonna go to another doc. He goes, you know, don't waste your money, because this is a condition. You either have it or you don't, and you got it. So don't waste your time. Well, I didn't take no. I went and got a second opinion, different doctor. He looks at it, he took x-rays of me, and he goes, these x-rays are different. Oops. So I had to go through a panel of 6 doctors at Central Receiving Hospital to have them say, wow, looks like we made a mistake. So guess what? There was my delay. There was my delay in Farrell's. Oh my gosh. Lord, did you delay us? You know, the lawsuit, the appeal, then the bankruptcy, and on and on and on. What has caused my dream to be delayed? If your prayer hasn't been answered, that's okay. It just means that just means you're in God's waiting room. Now is not the time to detour. That means don't go thinking, all right, I'm gonna try to jockey around this thing. When things don't happen on our timetable, we tend to run ahead of God and create detours to make it happen. You may end up making the wrong decision. So wait for God to work his hand. And that's what we did. That's what I did every single time. But then you're going to have difficulty. I mean, look at speaking of difficulties, we go through, we think we won, and then we didn't. With the LAPD, it took me another year to go through because there was still some issues that they had with the fact that there was a mistake that was made. So what difficulties have I faced waiting for the dream to be fulfilled? You are being tested. But it's not going to be the last time, and it wasn't for me. I was tested every time. You may go through many, many tests in life, God says. I know exactly what you're going through. I see it. I'm watching. Don't think I've forgotten you. I haven't. And he didn't. But that's, for me personally, that was one of the most difficult. That out of these, it's the hardest thing for me because I kind of want it. I want it when I want it. I think we all want it when we want it. But then you're going to have a dead end. After you have difficulty, you're going to have a dead end. What do you think Paul thought, when we got the text that the appellate court had ruled? And we're going through our phones and we're like scanning down, because we want to get to the decision. And we get to the decision and we're thinking, we scored, we're going to win, our attorney was awesome. And then we see the word overturned. You think that might be a dead end? Big dead end. Have I come to a dead end yet? Some of you are ready to give up. Wow, Paul and I were ready. Paul, how many times do you think we were going to give up during that 6 years? So he would say he's going to give up, and then I'd rescue him. And then I'd say I'm going to give up, and he'd rescue me. We had lots of dead ends. So some of you are there ready to give up, but the truth is, you're right where God wants you. You're getting prepared for deliverance. God's word for you is hang on, keep believing, don't give up. Yep. And we did. I mean, the first thing I did, and I remember I was telling my daughter, we were talking about this. I remember because I had to pull off the street. Paul had actually called me and said, hey, we got the decision. And I said, oh, shoot, did you see it? No, I haven't seen it. Okay, well, I'm going to pull over. So I pulled over. I'm going through, and I remember exactly where I was. And I remember exactly what I felt when I saw that. The very next thing I did is pray and say, God, you have taken us so far in this. But I trust you, and maybe you're trying to say this isn't where you want me. Maybe this isn't where you want me. But I'm going to continue to go through and try to do this unless you stop me. Well, he didn't. Because what ended up happening is we did get deliverance in the bankruptcy court in Riverside. So don't be discouraged when you hit the dead end. Just remember this. Just remember this. And I'm telling you, all of you students, and again, some of you are planning to get into your own business. You've got great ideas. I just heard this thing about Shark Tank. Oh my gosh, I'd love to be part of that. I love that show. Matter of fact, last year we went to this big restaurant show, and Damon, one of the sharks, was there as a keynote speaker. He wasn't very good, but got to meet him afterwards, and I love watching that show because it really is all about those dreams and all of that. So don't give up, because your next step is deliverance. Do I expect and trust God to deliver me? According to your faith, it will be done to you. God is faithful. What he tells us to do, he will do. But it doesn't happen overnight. You go through the faith phases: dream, decision, delay, difficulty, and dead end. And then comes deliverance. Wow. What a ride. When you pray and ask God to take you where he wants to take you, and you go along for that ride, woo, hang on. Hang on. So many people that I've gotten to meet over the years that are in faith that I've shared this story with, and then I hear their stories. Sometimes mine gets dwarfed by theirs. I'll tell you a quick one. Y'all like Yard House? Okay, so Steel Platt comes up with the idea for Yard House, and gets a bunch of people, and they get the thing together, and just like everything else, putting it all together and all that stuff. But they finally get the money, and they end up opening the first Yard House. He is so excited. I mean, anybody would be. Yard House is a great place. So the phone starts ringing and ringing and ringing. But the host comes up and says, "Mr. Platt, what do I do? People keep calling and asking, like, what kind of fertilizer do we recommend? And if we have dichondra or fescue." Yikes. Obviously, with a little marketing and a few jokes and all that, he was able to get over that. But you know what? Things happen. Things happen. So as I now reflect on my life and string of careers, on each one I went through the 6 phases of faith. Each career prepared me for the next. Today I walk in total faith. Every career, when I look back on the LAPD and I go, why would he put me through 8 years of the LAPD and go through that? I'll tell you why. Because one of the things that I do best for our company right now is loss prevention and investigations. You think that was God saying, I got this plan for you down the road. You didn't go to school long enough, so I'm going to help you with this. I'm going to push you into this. And then what do you think about watching a publicly traded company from a front row seat crash? This was a great company. A great company. But I knew there might be a little problem when, after the company went public, and I flew to Atlanta to see Scott, for meet with him and that, he goes, "Mike, I want to show you something." So we get in his car and we drive. By the way, I had a new car at that time. We drive and we get to this lake, and this big piece of property is probably 15 acres. He goes, "See that? 22,000 square foot home is going to be there in 1 year." Wow. And then, "Hey, yeah, by the way, tomorrow I'll pick you up because we're going to church." He didn't get the message. Or Satan got a hold of him, because he was really a good guy. He really was. But wow, did he change. The transformation was unbelievable. Something I'll never forget. Something that God will never let me forget. So my top 3 leadership principles. These are mine, my personal ones that were taught by Jesus that I kind of like. First, godly leadership is servanthood. 1 Peter 4:10, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. So you should think of your business as a service to others first. Whatever business. I don't care whatever business you're going to come up with, it's a service to others. Making money will come second always, or third or fourth. It's about give to get. What you give in the right ways, you will be rewarded. If everything you focus on is about closing the deal or more sales, people are going to see right through you. Remember, your business or work purpose is to serve, not be served. Listen for the opportunities to give first. Number 2, godly leadership is not being afraid. Mark 5:36. Overhearing what they said, Jesus told them, don't be afraid, just believe. There will be times when you are the only person who believes in your business dream. Anybody here that's had like an idea of doing something and you've talked to some people about it? Anybody been in that situation where you think you got this great idea, but everybody else is kind of going, yeah, I don't know, but you still got that strong dream? Well, if it's from God, you keep going. God wants to push ourselves to greatness. Don't be afraid. Just believe in yourself and your business or work goals. Do your homework and identify your goal and then put an action plan together. My partner Paul is a genius at that. That's his gift. That's his strength. And you need to look, when you're building a company, you need to look at all of those strengths. You need to find out where you're weak and have that offset by somebody that's strong in that area of weakness. Do that in every part. We actually did a personality. We've done a lot of things with Strength Finder. We've done a lot of other types of personality things. It's pretty interesting when Paul and I get scored. Like, I'll score really low on something he's real high, or he'll score really low on something I'm really high, and we're kind of going, wow, we really do offset each other, which is great because we cover each other's back. When you have a solid goal and a good plan, you don't have to be afraid. Winging it is scary and causes costly mistakes, and wow, have I made some costly mistakes. Number 3, hello. Godly leadership works to glorify God, not your wallet. I just keep thinking when I think of that Mount Tasia story. Those who live according to the flesh have their mind set on what the flesh desires, but those who live in accordance with the Spirit have their mind set on what the Spirit desires. Scott and Julie should have memorized that. Make sure you know the real motives behind why you work so hard in your business or at your business or job. Who are you glorifying with your work? That's a great question. Who are you glorifying? Anybody? Remember, everything we have belongs to God, and it's on a lifetime loan to you. We all know that. We got a lifetime loan from God. So we need to be a good steward with his money and everything he's given us. You will enjoy your life more because your focus is on what is really important. So with that, I want to thank you all very much for listening. I hope maybe you got something out of what I had to say that will maybe save you some hardships, or at least maybe gave you a thought of, as you go into your business, to always make sure that your mentor, my mentor, Jesus, has got an ear. Run it by him first. He may not answer right away, but I will guarantee you he will answer. I was introduced as a co-founder of the organization A Million Thanks, and that organization, what it does is it started out actually by my daughter when she was in high school to send thank you letters to the troops, and she had to do a service project at Lutheran High School, so she picked creating a program for people to write letters to the troops. And I said, well, how many you want to do? And she goes, well, I'm going to try to get 1 million. And she called it A Million Thanks. So I thought, wow. So she opened it up at her school, and the school decided, well, we'll help you. She had to stand in front of the entire student body and tell them why they should be part of this to honor our troops. And of course, everybody was behind it. There were a couple of television cameras there, that saw it. And, so I figured, she's going to get, she'll probably get 10, 20,000 thank you letters, and that'll be really good. Until she came home from school one day and she said, hey, Dad, I did a newspaper interview today. I said, oh, Orange County Register? Nah. I said, LA Times? Nah. Long Beach Press? Nah. Oh, Associated Press. Now, who are they? I said, when's the story coming out? She said, Friday. 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, the phone started ringing. CNN, Good Morning America, Today Show. 6 months later, guess what walked in the door at Lutheran High School? The 1 millionth thank you letter that she actually gave and presented to, at the time, President George Bush in the Oval Office. So you talk about a dream. Wow. And now her fiance, Matt, has taken over the organization that now not only does thank you letters, by the way, they're up to now over 7 million thank you letters have been sent to our troops all over the world. But now they also grant wishes. They created part of it that is now going to be like the Make-A-Wish for military. They've already granted 2 wishes. They're going to grant a third here very shortly. So if you can, go to amillionthanks.org and you can find out more information. There's scholarships as well for children of military, fallen military. So by the way, I should mention that for the school as well.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.